This is hands down the most brutal exorcism horror film out of Korea. A grotesque beast made up of tens of thousands of human hands, dragging the living straight into a hellish nightmare. But even this horrifying creature is no match for one man when a traffic cop asks him to take a breathalyzer test. His ring suddenly glows red, and his eyes turn blood red and terrifying. Then bam! He slams the gas pedal and drags the cop into a full-blown, high-speed chase. In the passenger seat, a young woman flashes a sweet smile, but when the cop won't back down, the man starts slamming his car into him like a lunatic. Despite the officer's grit, he's eventually thrown onto the street, his fate uncertain. Meanwhile, Yong-hoo is crushed with grief as he watches his father lie in a hospital bed, clinging to life. In desperation, he rushes to a church to pray. His father always told him, if you're devout enough, the Almighty can grant any wish. As Yong-hoo prayed, the priest walked over and assured him that God would save his father. Yong-hoo prays all night, but come morning, his father's heart stops. At the funeral, he spotted the priest and, in a fit of rage, hurled a cross at his face, planting the seed of hatred in his heart. To him, God is nothing but a lie. 20 years later, Yong-hoo is now a professional fighter, but when he sees a strange tattoo on his opponent's back, something inside him snaps. Voices of vengeance echo through his mind, his eyes glow red, and he loses all control. As the bell rings, he unleashes blow after blow, nearly killing his opponent. On the way home, he dreams of his father again, but when he runs toward him, his father vanishes, leaving behind only a lonely memorial tablet. The voices return. In a fit of rage, Yong-hoo grabs a cross to hurl it, but it mysteriously sticks to his palm. He jolts awake only to find the wound still on his hand, bleeding. The next day, he gets it checked at a hospital. The doctor says it looks like a regular cut. Nothing unusual. But one night, things get worse. A dark shadow appears over his body, as the shadow's hand plunges into his chest. Veins bulge across his skin and his face contorts in agony. The wound on his hand starts bleeding again. He wakes up in terror, blood still seeping from his hand, and rushes to the hospital for a full blood test, desperate to find out what's happening to him. On the drive back, the driver told Yong-hoo about his niece's experience. They had eerily similar symptoms, but in her case, the issue was with her eyes. Eventually, she underwent a spirit possession ritual, which not only solved her problem but gave her the ability to see ghosts and spirits. Ever since then, every night at midnight, Yong-hoo found himself trapped in recurring nightmares. The wound on his hand would start bleeding again and again. Finally, the results from his hospital tests came in, but everything looked perfectly normal. With no other options, Yong-hoo decided to visit the driver's niece, hoping she could help figure out what was happening to his body. When he arrived, she was already waiting for him, and what she said hit him like a lightning bolt.
너 뒤에 귀신들이 잔뜩 붙었어.
왜요?
네가 마음을 못되게 먹으니까 악하고 더러운 영들이 잔뜩 붙었지.
The voice in his head? It was all a deception by an evil spirit. The only thing protecting him was the ring his father left him, still radiating a gentle, pure energy. He showed her his hand, hoping for answers. She examined it for a moment, then turned away and got to work. She sprinkled glutinous rice on the table, then began shaking a bell in one hand while tapping the tabletop with the other. As the table trembled, a cross-shaped pattern mysteriously formed on the surface. She pointed him toward a church south of his home, telling him to go there at midnight. Someone there could help him. That night, Yong-hoo drove out to the church, but before he could enter, a crow landed in the road. He tried to shoo it away, but suddenly it lunged at him. Then, a whole flock of crows swarmed the area. He had no choice but to retreat into his car. Inside the church, Father On was in the middle of performing an exorcism. He splashed holy water on the possessed man, and white smoke immediately sizzled off his skin until the man collapsed. But when Father On pried open the man's eyes, they still glowed a deep, bloody red. He instructed Father Choi to flip the Bible to Psalm 84. Together, they began chanting to drive the evil spirit out, but the man remained unaffected. In fact, he broke free, lunging straight at Father On. Father Choi rushed to help, trying to pull him off, but no matter how hard he tried, the man kept his hands locked tight around Father On's throat. In the end, it was Father On's ring that saved him. Pressing it against the man's skin, the holy fire seared the spirit's flesh, forcing it to release its grip in agony. Suddenly, the the possessed man turned his fury toward Father Choi behind him. Without warning, the man lunged at Father Choi, pinning him to the ground. As Father Choi struggled beneath him, the man puffed up his cheeks. In the next horrifying moment, thick, black sludge spewed from his mouth, coating Father Choi below. No one knew what that foul, stinking liquid was, but it nearly drowned Father Choi. He could barely breathe, choking on mouthfuls of the vile stuff. Gasping for air, he finally managed to pry his eyes open, only to be met with the demon's grotesque, twisted face. Overwhelmed with terror, Father Choi panicked. He broke free from the man's grip and fled the church without even checking if Father On was still in danger. Now only two remained inside. The possessed man slowly turned his attention back to Father On, then charged at him again, tackling him to the ground and choking him with terrifying strength. Father On tried to fight back, but the man overpowered him, pinning his wrists until all resistance faded. All he could do now was pray, begging his lord for deliverance. As the man bared his teeth and let out a guttural roar, Yong-hoo arrived just in time. Father On finally caught his breath and looked up, trying to see who had come. Was this his savior? The man flipped himself up and clung to the rafters like a spider, glaring down at Yong-hoo, but hesitating to make a move. Yong-hoo, unfazed by the grotesque display, leaped into the air, yanked him down, and slammed him once more. The man got up to retaliate, but Yong-hoo pinned him again. As he pressed down, white smoke hissed off the man's face as if his skin had touched holy water. Startled, Yong-hoo pulled back and noticed the burn marks on the man's face. It seemed to react to the blood leaking from his own hand. With a demonic scream, flames burst from the man's burned skin. Yong-hoo stumbled back in shock, but Father On seized the moment. Grabbing the nearby vial of holy water, he poured it straight onto the man's face. It was like tossing gasoline on a fire. The flames flared up even higher, yet when the flames died down, the man looked completely unharmed, as if nothing had happened. Father On cautiously held out his ring. It didn't react, confirming the evil spirit had been completely exorcised. From behind, Yong-hoo finally revealed the reason he had come. After hearing everything, Father On understood what the wound on Yong-hoo's hand really was. It was a mark resembling the stigmata of Christ, something only the most devout believers could possess. To them, it was a holy gift, a sign of divine favor. But to Yong-hoo, it was pure nonsense. He felt nothing but hatred for God. Devotion? That was a joke. Right then, the seductive voice in his head returned, whispering, urging him to kill Father On.
죽여! 저 신부 죽여! 빨리 죽여버려! 신부 죽여! 거짓말쟁이! 살인마! 저 신부 죽여! 빨리 죽여버려!
Gripping his head, Yong-hoo dropped to the floor in agony, trying to silence the torment inside his mind. Seeing this, Father On quickly began reciting scripture, his voice steady and calm. Slowly, the evil influence faded, and Yong-hoo regained control. Wanting to help him further, Father On visited Yong-hoo's home and prayed over the space. Before leaving, he secretly placed a cross behind a framed photo, hoping it would protect Yong-hoo from dark forces. Meanwhile, a shaken Father Choi waited for Father On to return. After what he'd witnessed, he'd had enough. He was ready to resign from his post. That night, for the first time in a long while, Yong-hoo slept soundly until morning. When he woke up, he instinctively looked at his hand. No blood. Feeling oddly at peace, he got out of bed and, by chance, noticed the hidden cross behind the photo. Without thinking, he tossed it into the toilet, but as it sank, he hesitated, then reached in and fished it back out. Later, he went to the church and asked around until he found Father On's address. He returned the cross. Elsewhere, in a private club, a man named Hwang Shin-ho declared he was taking over security and the fee would be 30 million won per month. Refusal, he warned, might result in accidental fires. Across the table, the other man casually handed over a business card and told him to leave his bank details. While Hwang scribbled the information down, the man silently pierced his palm with a ring. Then he leaned in and revealed, Hwang's business partner was drowning in debt and planning to flee to Thailand with the money from selling their company. When Hwang tried to call, the number was already disconnected. He jumped in his car and sped away in a rage. Once he tracked down his partner, he didn't even give him a chance to explain, brutally torturing him, then ending his life in cold blood. Afterward, the man in black returned to a secret basement. He donned a dark ceremonial robe.
죄를 지은 영혼을 아버지께 바치려고 하오니 제게 힘을 주소서.
He burned the partner's bank details and sprinkled the ashes onto a human heart. Then, Using his ring again, he sliced his palm and let the blood drip onto the heart. And as the blood touched it, the heart began to beat. Elsewhere, in a dark parking garage, Huang Xinho encountered something truly terrifying. The moment the mysterious man stabbed the heart with a dagger, Huang Xinho collapsed in agony, writhing on the ground. That man was none other than Ji-shin, a devoted follower of the devil himself.
죄를 지은 영혼을 아버지께 바칩니다. 제게 영생을 주소서.
When the heart was tossed into a pool of water, it was snatched up by an unseen creature. Bubbles burst from the surface, and the water began to boil violently. Ji-shin removed his hat. His face twisted into something inhuman. His graying hair turned jet black again, and the wounds on his hands healed completely. Back with Yong-hu, after tossing away the cross, he found himself trapped in yet another nightmare. His face contorted in pain as blood streamed from his hand. Desperate, he returned to Father On. Without hesitation, Father On gave him a string of prayer beads and told him to keep it in his bedroom. In return, Yong-hu agreed to join Father On his next exorcism mission. They arrived at a family's home, where a nervous mother cautiously opened the door. Her fear of her own daughter was palpable. Father On took no chances. He marked the door with a cross using holy water, then stepped inside, clutching his cross.
마귀는 모습을 드러내라.
엄마,
네 정체를 밝혀라.
엄마! 엄마!
Ipse Christus tibi imperat quid nomen est. Ipse Christus tibi imperat quid nomen est.
The girl tried to manipulate them, claiming her mother was severely depressed and prone to suicidal delusions, accusing her of trying to take everyone down with her. Meanwhile, the mother quietly listened in from the staircase to test whether the girl was truly possessed. Father On pressed his ring to her forehead, but nothing happened. Still, Father On wasn't convinced. Some evil spirits, he explained, are cunning. They burrow deep inside the host to avoid being harmed by holy objects. But no matter how well they hide, they can't tolerate the holy water inside their bodies. Determined, he prepared to force her to drink it. He stormed into her room, pinned her to the bed, and poured an entire bottle of holy water into her mouth. White smoke began to billow from her lips as she grabbed at her throat, gagging violently. Then she spewed thick, black-red bile onto the bed, soaking the sheets in crimson. Moments later, she stretched and yawned as if she'd just woken from a nap. But when she turned her head, her face was flushed blood red, twisted into a sinister grin. In a flash, she lunged and grabbed Father On by the neck, hurling him across the room. Yong-hu leapt in and tackled her on the bed, but with a single shriek, she pulled him up to the ceiling and flipped him underneath her. Her glowing red eyes locked onto Yong-hu's, piercing into his soul and dredging up all his past pain. Then, she leaned in and whispered into his ear.
니네 아빠 죽인 애한테 내가 붙어 있었어.
Rage surged through him. He wanted to strangle the demon right then and there, to avenge his father, but the spirit only grew more deranged, twisting her face into a demonic mask and mocking him. Father On struggled to his feet and rushed in, fearing Yong-hu might lose control and kill the girl. With all his strength, he pulled Yong-hu away. The demon kept taunting, screeching furiously. Finally, after a long internal battle, Yong-hu managed to rein in his fury, snapping out of his rage just in time. Yong-hu removed his glove and walked toward the possessed girl, pressing his bare hand to her forehead. Immediately, the demon within her let out a tortured howl, its frenzy vanishing into raw agony. At that very moment, Ji-shin sensed it all. Blood poured from his eyes, streaming down his face. Yong-hu learned of the devil's existence from Father On. After the girl came to, Father On gently asked if she had recently met anyone new. She stayed silent. Then, her eyes began to bleed. The room's lights flickered wildly. Ji-shin was making his move again. He dripped his own blood into the mouth of a doll. The girl clutched her throat, gasping in pain.
Non draco sic vis. Paderectus Satan. Nunc am tuade mi pan.
Father On immediately resumed his scripture, battling Ji-shin's dark spell in a tense supernatural standoff. The power struggle escalated until Father On's voice reached a fever pitch. Finally, the doll in Ji-shin's hands burst into flames, breaking his control and freeing the girl. Determined to uncover the full truth, Ji-shin dropped Crow's blood into a pond and knelt to pray. As red light shimmered from beneath the water's surface, images flooded Ji-shin's mind, memories linked to the demon. He now knew everything that had transpired, and he had a new goal: divide and destroy both men. Elsewhere, in a church, a young boy was being brutally beaten by a group, then locked alone in the basement. That's when a man arrived, holding a lantern. He claimed he wanted to help the boy. Earning his trust, then began to guide him. With each whispered incantation, the boy's eyes turned ghostly white. The man grinned, satisfied. Later, this same man approached Yong-hoo, introducing himself as Father Choi, the one who had previously fled the church. Yong-hoo hadn't seen his face clearly back then, so he didn't suspect anything. The man showed Yong-hoo a wound on his palm, claiming it was a grace mark, one that would only worsen with use. He told Yong-hoo that Father On knew this, but never warned him, because he was using him. The man added that Father On would call for help tomorrow right on schedule. Meanwhile, the young boy in the church had already been possessed. With an eerie stillness, he stared at a nun in prayer. They called Father On for help, just as the dark stranger had predicted. Soon, Father On phoned Yong-hoo. According to the plan, if Yong-hoo didn't come, the demon would kill Father On. Though distracted and conflicted, Yong-hoo couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Ignoring the call, he eventually changed his mind and rushed to help. At the church, Father On found the boy and immediately subdued him. Under the pressure of holy items, the boy cried out his real name. Just when Father On thought the danger had passed, the lights flickered, doors slammed shut, and the boy reawakened. This was Father On's most brutal exorcism yet. 666 demons crammed into one small body. The battle left him coughing blood. While he was weakened, the demon knocked the cross from his hands and straddled him, unleashing a savage assault. A terrified nun picked up the fallen cross and drove the demon back, but it scrambled up to the ceiling and, with horrifying speed, lunged at her, wrapping its hands around her throat. Just then, Yong-hoo burst through the door. The demon turned to him instantly, but Yong-hoo grabbed it and slammed it to the ground. Blood dripped from his hand as he leaned down and pressed it to the boy's forehead. Later, Yong-hoo helped the battered Father onto his feet. When the boy awoke, he remembered seeing a man in a black Roman collar but couldn't recall his face. That night, Ji-shin began a new ritual. He smeared the pond water across his face and suddenly possessed a nearby animal. He charged toward the church, startling the sleeping boy. As the boy stepped out of his room, the possessed dog lunged at him. Meanwhile, from the depths of the pond, a strange egg floated to the surface. Ji-shin cracked it open and pulled out a venomous stinger. Meanwhile, Father On and Yong-hoo received devastating news the boy had died. They went to the morgue to pray for him. Unaware of what was coming, Ji-shin suddenly appeared and lured Yong-hoo out of the room. As soon as he left, the body bag on the table began to move. The boy's voice whispered from within. Father On cautiously unzipped the bag only to find the boy sitting up slowly, his face full of sorrow, pleading for a hug. Moved, Father On embraced him. That's when Ji-shin materialized behind Father On. Yong-hoo, sensing something was wrong, rushed back to the morgue. Ji-shin seized the moment he held Father On's life hostage and demanded that Yong-hoo relinquish his divine gift. To save Father On, Yong-hoo slowly raised his right hand and began reciting the vow to give up his grace. But Father On made a different choice. He sacrificed himself. refusing to let Yong-hu surrender the only weapon strong enough to defeat Ji-shin. Seeing father gravely wounded, Yong-hu carried him back to the church. He laid him down on a bed while Father Choi applied holy water to his neck and began to pray. Yong-hu left alone, he needed answers. He found Su-jin and demanded Ji-shin's whereabouts. Without a word, she handed him a black card. Using the address on the card, Yong-hu arrived at a private club where Ji-shin's henchmen were already waiting. Without warning, they attacked. A flurry of blows came from all sides. Even Yong-hu, a former boxing champion, struggled to hold his own. Eventually, they pinned him to the ground. He fought to block every strike. Then he saw Ji-shin watching from nearby. Fueled by rage, Yong-hu threw the attackers off and marched toward him. He peeled off his jacket, pulled out a vial of holy water, and poured it over the wound on his palm, the mark of divine grace. Now armed, he turned to face the oncoming enemies. One after another, they fell. Seeing his men fall one by one, Ji-shin didn't linger, he turned and walked away. Yong-hu tried to chase him, but was blocked once again. Meanwhile, Ji-shin stood before the dark pond and slit his palm, but this time, the vision he received was clear. Drive the venomous stinger into his own heart. He hesitated, fear flickering in his eyes. Outside, the last of his guards was quickly overwhelmed. Yong-hu slammed his burning palm against the man's face, ending the fight. Hearing noise from the basement, Ji-shin steeled himself and plunged the stinger deep into his heart. Just as Yong-hu entered, he saw Ji-shin collapsing into the pond. Yong-hu approached cautiously, but the water suddenly exploded. Ji-shin rose again, clawing his way out of the pond, but now, he was no longer human. He was a full-blown demon, twisted, monstrous, straight from the pits of hell. Without hesitation, he charged at Yong-hu, and the two clashed in brutal combat. But the holy flame in Yong-hu's hand, the divine grace, no longer worked. Physical attacks didn't hurt him either. Ji-shin kicked Yong-hu hard to the ground, then lunged and sank his teeth into Yong-hu's shoulder. Everything went black. When Yong-hu awoke, he found himself in a strange, otherworldly space. Suddenly, a light appeared behind him. He turned and saw his father. Overwhelmed, Yong-hu embraced him, sobbing for the first time in years. As they parted, his father extended a hand. Yong-hu placed his palm against it.
언제까지나 함께 있을게.
When he woke again, his hand was engulfed in flames stronger than ever. He rose to his feet, eyes locked on Ji-shin. Now, the divine flame could hurt him again. The battle was back on. For every wound Ji-shin inflicted, Yong-hu seared him with sacred fire. Finally, Yong-hu slammed him against a wall, pressing his flaming palm into Ji-shin's abdomen, then gripped his throat with burning fury. Though wounded, Yong-hu stood tall. Even after being smashed into the stair railing, he rose and attacked again. He forced Ji-shin back, and they clashed fists beneath the column's pure, brutal hand-to-hand combat. Ji-shin collapsed. Yong-hu pulled out Father-on's sacred relic and infused it into his flame. The fire roared higher than ever. Then they both unleashed their strongest punch. Yong-hu walked over, yanked the venomous stinger from Ji-shin's chest, and burned him to ash. The flames in his palm vanished. Just as he turned to leave, the pond behind him began to stir.